Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of TRCOA's Behind the Groove. If you're here live, please introduce yourself and ask questions in the chat as we go along. This episode is sponsored by Stinson Recording Studios. Also, if you find this content useful, please like this video, and if you are new, please subscribe to our channel. We make new content every week. Today we are proud to have Ben Cleaver. Today he's going to show you how to comp playlists in Pro Tools. Ben is the owner of Nebula 88 Studios and one of TRCOA's beginning recording techniques instructors. Without further ado, Ben Cleaver.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TRCOA's Behind the Groove seminar. I'm Ben Cleaver and I will be leading you through another lesson tonight. Tonight we are going to be talking about comping. So it's comping and playlists in general. This is going to be more after you've done tracking or while you're doing your tracking session. It's going to be how we handle your takes. So this is going to be, what's up Michaela, what's up Corey, welcome, welcome. So tonight we're going to be talking about comping, and we're going to look at it across some different instruments and different sources. So we're gonna take a look at doing it on vocals, on bass, on guitar, and on drums. Just because, I mean, the same like general way of treating it is going to be the same how you comp. There's just a couple little things you want to pay attention to when you're doing each one of these compared to if you've only comped with vocals or you haven't comped with any other instruments, just because there's usually more breaths and gaps in vocals where it's easier to comp stuff together, where you got to be a little more thoughtful and pay a little close attention to where like your actual hits are and what's going on in the music when you're making cuts with actual performances of instruments. So we are going to, thanks JG, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Welcome, welcome. So tonight, let's go ahead and let's get into this. We're going to talk about comping. So those of you who don't know what comping is. So comping is going to be where when you're recording, it's likely that you're taking more than one take. Hopefully you're taking more than one take whenever you're going through this, unless you just have the most unbelievable artist in the world who can drill their stuff at the first take of the first thing you're doing, which is pretty much unheard of. But then you're likely going to be having multiple takes that you're doing on any given part of a song or instrument that's going along into a song. And so we use comping to take the best parts of lines or sections from within different takes to put them together to create the best full take. Now, there's plenty of times where you may have a song where the take is all the way through and it is great and you don't need to comp. Now, vocally, it's usually something you're most likely going to always have some kind of vocal comping. And now on the instruments, this is more something out of necessity if the performance wasn't up completely to par all the way through on everything, but they played it really well in a different take, and then we can put it together. So just comping in general is going to be taking these other takes and splicing them together to create our full final take. So that is just the overview of what comping is. Now the question is, why would we comp? After explaining what it is, we comp to get the best overall performance that individual did, whether it be vocally or instrumentally. So it allows us to take choices of different takes, because also when you're recording artists, you may have, not only are they may be just doing the exact same take and you're trying to pick the best one, they may still be kind of in the exploratory phase on some parts of the song, and you may be there, guiding them through some of that, where they're singing different sections in, different like different styles or different voicings, and this allows you to, choose between those and actually A/B sections, and using playlists for that kind of stuff as well. Generally, in the end, comping, what it does is it's going to give us the best final product, because we're going we're almost going towards perfection at that point, because we're taking the best section of every little thing that they're singing all the way through or they're playing, and then piecing that together. Obviously, this is why it matters if you're doing multiple takes. You want players to be in the exact same spot. You want mics to be in the exact same spot, and none of that moving where it's all done in the same session. Because likely if any of that is changed at all from days, or even if a mic slightly moved to a different spot, or they're playing it a different way, then it's going to be much harder to comp them together and it feel like it's the same take. So that's usually part of the goal you're trying to go for when you're comping too, is listening to make sure that the take is going with that as well. Howdy there, Harry. Also, another thing too, it's the fact that we are in the digital world now, so it is much, much easier to do these comping things, so it's something we can do. So if we can make something a little bit better by going into detail and cutting from other pieces, then that's something we can do, and that's a pretty big part of what you do now in modern audio production with the tools we got. And before we actually dive into the comping a little more and looking at this section, the other thing you want to do, like that I would usually recommend, is if you're not comfortable comping, then don't do it in the session. But once you're comfortable doing comping and doing it pretty quick, I definitely always want to try to do this stuff either as I'm tracking, as I'm doing guitars or drums or something. I may try to, piece it together already as we're going through the song. Vocally, I definitely usually want to try to do that with the artist there, or with the producer, or both if they have a producer, or if the producer's making all the decisions, then it's not necessary. I mean, he may want the artist there, he may not. It all just depends on their relationship, which at that point, that's kind of up to them. It's not really between you. But when you have either the artist or the producer there in the room with you when you're comping, that at that point, because I may have a different opinion than what the artist wants on a section or the way that they approached a part of a song. And unless you're the producer, you want to step away from that. It's not your song, so don't get caught up in, I think this take is better, so we're going to do that no matter what. It's not your song. If they didn't hire you to be the producer and you are the engineer, your job is to engineer and make it sound as best as what they're playing, not change their song if they don't want you to. So always keep that in mind. Unless you're hired as the producer, try to go towards what the artist and client wants at that time and not what you personally want. Now just keep that in mind whenever they're doing arrangements and talking about like their songs and what takes they want to do in there. Now, when you're mixing, obviously some of that's going to be, your creativity, but then they'll also come back in and, let you know what they like to change and how they want it to sound. And at the end of the day, your goal as an engineer is to have the final product be what the client or the artist that you're working for, what they want. So always keep that in mind. So that's going over what to comp, why to comp, when to comp. I always try to do it in session. Now, there's some times where you get into a mix and you hear something that you didn't hear maybe in tracking in one little spot, and then that's why it's good if you have other takes, then you can go in and find that when you're in that scenario. But for the most part, I try to handle this when I'm in the session so that first off, when they're leaving, we already have the song structure already made, we have the parts, they know what it is, and then at that point it's more ready for mixing. Because if you haven't done comping and editing and all that stuff, especially when you get into vocal tuning and that kind of stuff too, technically until you've done all that stuff, your song is not mix ready yet. Like, you haven't prepared your song fully for a mix. So this is like the stage that you would do after tracking / during tracking before you ever even get into the mix. Okay, so that's just thinking about that. That's when you should be doing comping. Yes, sir, JG. Customer is always, especially on this with songs. Again, if they tell you exactly what they want, and even if it's not what you want to do, then that's what you give them, and then if they're happy, then they'll keep coming back to you. So. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look and just take a quick listen to what we have going on here. I do have some sections here, like the drums, that I've already had moved out. Now I'm just going to show you how I'm going to comp some of these sections, but this has been pre-comped before this, but I'm going to go through these different sections and show you, how to actually approach them. So you can see in some sections when I'm saying comping, you can see that I have different takes and colors right here. So it's like these takes in green were one take, and then this take in orange was another take, and I blended them together to make a fine, like this take. So just this is just a little bit of listen to what we're going on in this song. of see some of the edits I have going on in here so far. Now, a lot of these cuts you kind of see, like, I mean, not all of this is comping. A lot of this stuff that I'm doing here, I kept this in just so y'all can see that you can do this. A lot of times, I had a lot of stuff going on the drums. We talked about time. We talked about doing time editing with Beat Detective last week. And so these were drums I for sure had to time edit, and it was not because of the style of song, but it's because of how the drummer wanted to do this. So this would be a scenario exactly why. He played one track across where he had his main drum track, but he wanted to have this extra rolling snare roll that's going behind his drum kit the whole time in the chorus that kind of gives this kind of rolling thing. But I had to put those two on a grid to get them to make sure they felt completely tight, just because some of the parts were kind of push and pull on the drums. So that's something I had to do, since they wanted that extra overroll, even though they were playing together with each other. Then once I did that, I had to time align other stuff to it. So this is like a perfect example of why you would time align something that's not the genre specific, but the song and the way they played it required me to do it. So that's just kind of an overview of what you're seeing with comping. So now let's go down here and we're going to actually talk about going into it and how we would do comping in this scenario. So we're going to start with vocals here. And just because this is a single, we're going to look at a single vocal, and this is just the easiest way. And then we'll go into the groups like drums and guitars and just show a little bit different on those fronts. So besides looking at the session, obviously you tracked it, so you want to think about what's going on in your session and what's all in here. So we do have drums. We have, which is up top. Oh, my thing kind of froze there. So we have drums up top up here, which is all the blue. Then I have bass, which is going on right here. And then we have several different guitar tracks where we got some picking and some chords and some strumming, and then we have acoustic guitar as well through this, and then we have vocals down here. So that's just kind of the overview of those. Anything that you have multi-tracked though is something you want to group. Like you see, like I did stereo tracking with the guitars here, so each one of these guitars has 2 microphones on them, so that's why you're seeing these double tracks for each one, so they're just a little bit thicker. This was earlier, and to some extent I still like having them on two different tracks. It depends what you're going for, because when you do have guitars on 2 different tracks like this, you can change the blend a little bit. On this one, I like the way it is. But if it was something where I really like the blend of how I had just the stereo mic, I would probably track this into a stereo track instead of a mono track, just so I have less track counts, because it's easier to deal with. But either way, it's always just depends on how you want to go into it. But if you do choose stereo, just know that you can't individually, treat these microphones differently, so just keep that in mind. So anyway, that was just a little side note as we're going through that. So let's go ahead and we're going to talk about playlisting now. So for those of you who are in Pro Tools, some of you may ask, hey, what's playlisting? I just want you to know how to create a playlist. So first, let's show you inside each track here, we have a little tab that says the track view selector. And we have blocks, playlists, analysis, warp, waveform. Waveform is what is always on, where you normally see that. Then you have volume, volume trim, mute, and pan. All these are lines that like show you the actual like automation line. So like, if you went to any of these, it just shows what's going on there. But for playlists, which is what we want to see, this is where I open up, and you can see that we've taken 2 different takes of his vocals in this session. So we did one take all the way through there and 1 take all the way through there. Normally I'm doing a lot more takes in this. This guy was just a really good vocalist his tone was really good. I barely had to do any correction at all on anything, so he just kind of naturally came in and sang the song really well. But this is how you get to playlist view. So this is the 2 different takes. And just normally, just when you're thinking about this, whenever I'm doing tracking, I usually like to leave the main playlist open, the one that's the actual title one, and then I go ahead and create a new playlist, and I like to do my first take on .01, take 01. So then from there on out, as I'm going, take 1's take 1, take 2's take 2, take 3, and then once I comp everything up and I'm on this main verse, that means when I'm hiding everything, now I don't have any numbers anywhere in any of my sessions. So you see, I don't have any the .02 things. Not that it's a big deal. I just like my session to look really clean. So everything in here, it just looks like the actual title track. So I'm not having oh, I have take 27 going on, like bass.take 27 over here. So it's not that it's a big deal. I just like it that way personally, because it just looks better to me. So now that we've kind of talked about that, how to create playlists, if you didn't know, you can actually hit the drop down here and create new, which creates a blank playlist, or you can create duplicate, which actually takes all the audio information in that and makes a new playlist. I'll just show you how to make a playlist right here, because if you do click new, you'll see that it'll put a number and see it'll say verse 03, and then if I click OK, then it makes the verse to the new one. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I don't need that other verse, but I just wanted to show you all how to do playlists. You can also do that really fast with either Control and /, which is right above return, which lets you do the new playlist, which is exactly the same thing. Or if you want to do the duplicate playlist, you hold Control, Command, and /, and then now it says name for duplicated playlist, which I'll just show you what that looks like just so you see it when you press OK. Now it makes verse 03, but it put all that audio just there again. So just keep that in mind on what those two playlists are doing. So that is those, and that's just how you create a playlist. So now let's look at how we're actually going to do playlists. So before I just showed you how to access them with this drop-down menu and going to playlists. There is also a hotkey to do this, which if you hold Control and Command when your cursor is on the main track here, whatever track selected on, it will allow you to switch between all of these different chains right here. So like if I hold Control and Command and go to the left, it's going to go all the way till I get to blocks, which so I'm going through blocks. Then I'm going through playlists. Then it goes to waveform. Then all the different ones I told you about: volume trim, mute, pan. So this is just a fast way that you can get to all these automation parameters without having to click and open everything. So that's just Control and Command using the left and right arrows. So now I'm back to my playlist view, which is where I want to be. And I'm going to show you how to do this manually, just in case. So let's say that we're going here to listen to these takes. So I hit solo on this track. All I'm going to hear is this main track. Pretending to love only me. And now if I come down here and I press solo on verse 1, now I'm going to be listening to this take right here. Pretending to love only me with your Mona Lisa smile. You're driving around all day. I made it just a half a mile. And so right out the gate, like I said, I already picked the ones that I wanted to use, but I'm just going to show you how to do this. So now let's say that I wanted to take this section after hearing part 2. Like, so if I wanted to hear take 2 down here, I can just go click on this part down here. It'll move the solo, and now I'm listening to take 2. You're driving around all day. I made it just a half a mile. So that just allows us to, listen. That's how we listen to our individual takes. If you want to listen to it with the music, same thing. If I wanted to hear it with that one, So you can see where, it's listening to whatever this solo is when you have playlist mode open. So now the other important thing is when you have open in this view, in this mode, whatever track is up on top as the main playlist. Think of this. This is called your main this is called your main track list right here, and then these are your playlists underneath it. So anything when you're in this section, like if I grab this, I'm going to show you. Let me put this on slip. So I'm just going to grab these 2 words right here, and I want to change those. So manually, I can grab those. I can go over here. This little push-up arrow lets me jump that section right up to my new playlist. So even if I take this waveform now and now I go listen, you're going to hear that new take. So that lets me immediately get those up very quick, where I can, take individual words like, oh, if I like the entrance of this word better than this one, like we can comp, you could comp just one thing. Like you can go as tight as you want to small fractions whenever you're comping. Just, always on this, it's going to be listening to exactly what you want to do. On this, I'll talk a little bit more about vocals on this front too. So on vocally, whenever I'm comping vocals, I'm listening to their, obviously the performance in general, how the pitch is it fitting with how the song feels? Is the performance right? Is the energy there? And so that's That's really what I'm looking for right there. Is it because sometimes they may hit the note, but the actual like performance is not as strong as you want it to be. So there may be times where you're like, okay, he pushes this hard enough and I can actually tune that to make that sound right, but I like his performance. So you want to really think in depth on each instrument we're going through. So vocals here, I'm really thinking about timing, energy, performance, and pitch is the 4 things that I'm really thinking about on vocals. So that was the manual way to send all these up, is for me to just grab a section, come over here, hit the arrow, and push it up. Now, there's actually a quicker way that we can do this. Like, so let's say if I was listening to this section over here and I wanted to read, like, you know, use this section in this part of the song now. So let's say I wanted to do that. So you could always press the arrow and do this, but we do have hotkeys that allow us to do this a little bit faster. So JG makes a great point. Syllables of words. I mean, another thing you should be listening to in vocals too is the clarity, like their sibilance. Like, are you able to understand everything that they're saying? If you can't understand a word that they're saying and you're in the session with the artist, then like probably the listener's gonna definitely have a hard time doing that. So at that point, that's where you want to kind of push your artist towards more like, hey, let's really exaggerate our pronunciation more on this, or you know, so just really attack those individual things. Like that's a very good point. Is you're definitely always want to listen to how they're pronouncing, and if it's not clear enough, then that's not only is timing, energy, and pitch performance. Their words need to be audible to an extent on what they're doing, so we can know what they're saying, which gives a much better listening for the audience and the listener. So at this point, now that let's say we were back at this. So I wanted to grab this and move this section up. A fast way to do this, instead of going and clicking the arrow, the hotkey is Option Control V, and you can see it's going to jump it right up. Now let's say, you know, I didn't actually want to do that one. If I wanted to click down and listen to the other one, I'll show you. Like, if you can do all of this with just by hand, like without ever having to click, I could do this entire comping thing without even, like, besides grabbing just the section that I need, like just the area that I need. Because then from here I can use P and exclamation, like P and semicolon once I'm in this, and it'll move from track to track. You see it's highlighting different tracks. And then if I hit Command S over here, now I'm listening to that solo. And then I might go up and just hit P, go up, hit Command S, Shift S again, where I solo that. And let's say, yes, I want to do that one. So then I can hit Option Control V, and then there it shoots the section that I want up right into my verse. And you notice I'm picking between all the little kind of spaces here. I mean, you can even go so much as to cut in between words if you really, really have to. Just make sure you're really good at doing crossfades and when you listen to where the section that you're picking, because if you can hear a click at all and it doesn't sound super smooth, then don't do that edit. Like make it where it sounds natural and you're not hearing any of those clicks. So this is all, I want to make sure I'm getting all the, I want to make sure I was getting those for you where you can see those moves. Now I'm going to show you one other way about how I like to do playlisting, especially because this is a newer function in Pro Tools that they used to not have. There is a function called Target Playlist, and we can reach these by clicking on the little blue arrow right here, which I like to do this on all my tracks because it makes it, because there's times like, I mean, this is a super light vocal take. I'm pretty used to having vocal takes that might have 20 to 30 different takes under one of these lines. So I don't, there's sometimes I'm not going to look at all 30 in that way, and I'll show you, like, because I may jump straight to a section. But I want it to go straight to this target playlist no matter where it is, whether it's on the top or not, and it'll automatically go to it when you select a target playlist. And now I'll show you when I select a target playlist, let's say I want it to be verse, which is what I want it to be. When I open my other playlists, you'll see that now it's made the, actually let me go to, it's like, you still see the same ones, but let me go back to, like, if I go look at take two, like take one now it's orange instead of blue because I have a main playlist option. So like you can see, this is what this does when you have target playlist. It's highlighted, has the little blue line next to it, dot. If you actually look at it in playlist view, you'll see that it has the blue square punched in. So you can also say which one's the target playlist by just opening playlist and clicking the little blue square as well. Now, I'm gonna go back up to where I put these in order, because I always want to keep my numbers in order. That's something you also want to pay very close attention to, is making sure that your takes are always in order. So that's why a lot of times in this, like let's say if I wanted to go to a section really quickly and I just wanted to check out this area, I can use hotkeys and I can hold shift and the arrows on this, and I can go through my playlists right there without actually having to open playlists. You see how I'm holding shift and down arrow, and I'm going between the main verse. Here's take one, like this is the comp verse was up here. Here's take one, here's take two. I know I took take two, so I'm gonna move take one up. I'm gonna use my same hotkeys. I have that section there, and I use Option Command V. And now when I go up to my main playlist, now you see that it is comped there from that section because I picked the target playlist. So when I tell it to go up to the target playlist, it automatically sends it to whatever one is selected on that. So this is how you can do, until you get comfortable, you need to be really comfortable with where everything is in your session and really fast at doing it that way. But if you're gonna do it this direction, the way that I was just showing you right there, that's once you're really fast at this. Until you get fast at this, I would recommend y'all doing the open the entire playlists mode and just grab sections and just listen and go through and grab each one of those. Also, it's a lot easier if you're with an artist. That's usually comping I do personally by myself. Like if I'm doing instruments or something really quickly that I'm trying to do it as fast as possible. With artists, I usually open it up because I want them to be able to see the different takes too, so they can sit here and say, no, I actually like the second dot from the purple better than the blue dot, because they might not know what the number is, but it makes it really easy for them to really see what's going on in the session, and it makes it easier to communicate with them just what you're doing. So that's usually how I would do this in session. If I'm doing vocals with them, I'll open it so they can see all the different takes and they can point to ones that they think they like better. That makes that part really easy as well. And so that's going to cover the main, this is showing all the main buttons and functions that you can use when using playlisting. So we talked about doing it the manual way, where you can grab it and just press the arrow to shoot it, to send it up to your main playlists or your target playlists, and you just grab the section. We also talked about doing it with the hotkeys, which allows us to, we can send it up to the target playlist with Control Option V, which is what'll work for that. You can move up and down with P and semicolon, which makes it really easy to jump around your session. You can also do this too if you're like me and others of you who have multiple, like you might have two screens, like that. It only works with P and semicolon when you're on this edit screen. If you're clicked on the mix screen where this is like highlighted, it won't work when I'm pressing P and semicolon. But there is but you can do an overload where it's like forces it to do that when you're in the screen. So if you hold Control while doing P, you're actually going to see, like, watch the highlighted part down here move around the tracks just like it would on this side when I'm pressing P and semicolon. But if I hold Control from this view and do P and semicolon, it moves as well. So you can see that it's moving around from there from using P and semicolon. But like I hold Control if I'm not on the edit playlist and I'm trying to get it to move around. So I just want y'all to be aware of that. So that is some hotkey stuff there. When you're on your main playlist, you can access playlists from either clicking directly here, because remember you're going to start from waveform, clicking directly here and going to playlists, or you can hold Control Command and press the left arrow and it'll send you straight to playlists as well. And then you can do Shift Control Command and right arrow just to send it right back to waveform as well. So that is the hotkeys for how to move around playlists and how to and how to do that very quickly. Also, like I was saying, you can switch between the playlists like just very quickly if you wanted to hear them overall by just holding Shift and down or up as I'm going. So I'm at the top here, so there's no other way for me to go. I'm at the master playlist. Then when I go down, I can see all those individual ones. So that is how we can quickly grab those in comp, so you can see all the comps are happening here. Now the next thing you want to do after you've comped on vocals, so we did talk about vocals, and then we'll go talk about the other instruments and just how I might approach those. But once you've done your comps, you want to either go in and manually, which this is totally fine too. Like let's say this is the comp we just did. You can either manually go in and do your crossfades, where you get the little cross arrow and you turn it till you want, or you can do a little quicker way if you grab the two sections, like the two different parts across here. I mean, we could actually grab all of these. I'm just going to show it right here, though. Do you ever rate a take? I mean, I know you can rate a take. Let me see. I know you can turn them on. Like some people will do these if you have a ton of takes. You can put 5 stars on something so you know, like, hey, this is one of the takes I really like. I believe it is in, let me see, because it's in clips. Let me see where that, because I know there's a place where I turn on, I just need to find it, where I turn on the extra, I think it's probably in view. Yep, there it is, clip. So see, you can actually turn rating on. John was asking about if we can rate a clip. So if you go to view and you go to clip, you can actually turn rating on. And now it puts this rating here. And I believe we can just go in. Actually, I'm not a person who's used much of the rating thing, so I would have to, let's see if it lets me just do this straight from grabbing the section here, if I can rate it. That's something I really haven't done much because I usually just look at it when I'm going through. There it is at the very bottom, so you can go through. It's like basically what you want to do is you want to go on that clip. You can right click on that clip. It's the very, very bottom thing that says rating down here. And so let's say I liked take 1, but it was okay, and I liked take 2 better. So like you know, if I gave take 1 a 3 and then gave take 2, which I really liked, a 5, I know that the 5, or you know, you can do it whatever. Like 1 is your favorite take. You can rate them where you can have whatever your personal system is, but whatever lets you know how good the take is, you can use ratings if you really want to. So that is where you would go for that. So good question, John. Thanks for asking on that one. I'm going to hide them again right now just because I just don't want to see them right now. But that's something, if you do want to do ratings, you can go into view, go to clip, and turn those on. So now that we have gone through all the basic overviews of that, we're just going to talk about how we approach each individual instrument. So again, on vocals, like I said, we're listening for the timing, the pitch, the energy, the performance, their sibilance, how they're pronouncing the words, and their clarity. So those are the three. Those are all the things we want to. 3. I said a lot more than that. So those are all the things we really want to look at when we're doing vocals. Again, after we're done. Okay, and then he asked me about ratings, and I was going to go to fades here. So sorry to get a little off there. I was answering his question. Again, once you've done your fades, we need to go crossfade. So you could do them by hand, or you can do Command F, which brings up our batch fades menu, and then you can decide how you want the shape to be. I'm going to keep these standard, but this is where you can do the more like equal power kind of turn moves like that. If you like doing the more slow, like the more gradual drop on that, or if you want the equal gain drop straight through that. Down here, you can put the links of your fade operations. I believe it starts at like 30 milliseconds or something like that. I like 20 milliseconds is a good time that I like. You can see like that's how it's kind of already set up here because I've been doing stuff on it. So 20 milliseconds is usually pretty good for these. If you want them to be bigger, you can obviously type in whatever size you want in here though. So just keep that in mind too. Let me put this back at 20. And so now if I do Command F and click OK, now if I zoom in on this section, we can see it put crossfades in. So like on these over here, I'll zoom in again. I'm going to grab more than, and now just another thing too when you're doing this, like if you just grabbed like a section like this and you do Command and there was just a single thing, that one does it fine. It's more like if you only grabbed an individual like break like this. If you grab an individual break like this and press Command F, it's going to do the crossfade however big your selection is. So watch how big this is going to be. Like it's the entire selection that I did. So it's only going to do the small batch crossfades if you're grabbing more than one cut point that needs to be crossfaded. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 points here. I do Command F, then you click OK, and when I zoom in, now we have all our crossfades in between those. So that's something you definitely want to make sure that you always do after you're done comping is put crossfades in there. Okay, so now we'll go to the next. We'll just look at this as if we were comping the bass, just because it's another single take instrument. So this is something where we would. So I've done the same thing again. I'm using my hotkey Control Command left to get to playlists. Again, if you want manually, you can just go to waveform and click on playlists, and it'll take you there. So now we have our different takes. I'm just going to look at this very beginning part and show you how I would go into this. So I'm going to mute solo the bass for a second. And so let's say there was something in there that we didn't like, and I wanted to replace that with a different take. So I come down here, let's take a listen to take 3. And see, he kind of had a mishit on that one note right there, so that's why I'm going through and listening to another one. So let's say I like that beginning right here, and I want to use this now for the entrance of this. I'm going to try to grab this, right in between, where this part's kind of like this is something with instruments you're really going to want to zoom in and see where you're like. I wouldn't want to cut in between this note right here, even if the timing's kind of because we don't want to be cutting in between where these are. You can do cuts sometimes with how these tails are going out, but again, you got to be very careful about how you're doing the crossfades in there so it doesn't sound like a punch. So if I send this up to my main playlist, let's say now I wanted to do that. And now we're listening to this. The main thing I want to go to, the first thing I want to do is listen to where the transition happens. Which that's very nice. Like let's say you cut it in a different spot and you were like right here and you see that going up. This is the part where you would either want to take this next direction where you're seeing, you can see like how some of these times aren't this is where you're with instruments, you really got to listen to where the overlap is and if it feels right in that point. So here I would obviously if the next take feels good, I would tell you to pull this back where he has this little pause in here. So it feels a little smoother. And now you see even on that one, there's a little blip on that. I don't want that little blip in there. So I took this side that way just a little bit more to make sure that feels good. And then obviously, of course, after you do all that, you always want to do your crossfades in there, and that'll make sure, because sometimes if you will hear pops when you're doing some cuts like that. If they're there, you'll hear like an actual jump in between those. Let me see if I can just recreate that right quick. Because if this was right here, you might hear a popping. Which that one actually came through pretty smooth. It's more likely you're going to hear pops on guitar just because of the way the instrument works, and it's more picked. And so on bass, again on that, when you're doing single bass note, we just want to make sure that you're looking at where the transients, where the notes are, and that you're getting the smoothest transition between those. Now guitars, this is where, like I said, if you're doing anything that's multi-tracked, like guitars here are multi-tracked. I have two mics on the amp when I was recording them. So we want to create groups whenever you make each one of these. So let's say we were looking at this, this section right here in the chorus where he's doing this picking, or let's say we're at the beginning, let's see what takes we have underneath that. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have here on those. Great. Okay, so first thing you want to do is you would want to take these, if you haven't already made them in groups, which I already did. This is what I have as my EG1, so if I turn that off now, let's go over here where we can see the groups. This is EG1, which I've created a group. If you don't know how to make a group, what you want to do is you want to select the two you have here, do Command G, and then type in the group name and make sure the 2 tracks that you want in the group are in the group. And then and now once you have them grouped, that anytime I select one of these, it automatically selects both of them. Now, if I didn't have the group on, I accidentally turned that group on. That's why I was like, man, why is this doing this? Because I meant to close that group and not create it. So, because if I don't have the group on, you'll see it just grabs one. If I do have the group on, then it moves them as a pair. And we want them to be moving as a pair because we tracked them at the same time. If you try to mix different mics from different takes, it is definitely going to sound bad, and the phase is going to be off, and it's not going to sound right at all. So anything that you have multiple sources on, you have to move all of them at the same time. So I've created a group for this. Now you can open it, and I'm going to try to make these a little bit smaller where we can see all this on the screen. Let me try that again, because it's being weird with the playlist. Sometimes it does that, because the playlist is just going to be whatever size that this is going to be. So I'm making these a little bit smaller. Actually, I'm just going to do, Boy, these are just, I'm just gonna make this really small because this just got out of hand real fast. So let me get back to this group. I don't know why that was being so weird right there, but okay. Now that I'm on this group, I was just trying to make these a little bit smaller so we could see all the playlists that are underneath it, so that you can see whenever I have these groups, like if I go grab this one, you see that it's also grabbing the playlists underneath the next one. So I don't have to necessarily, once you have groups on, I don't necessarily have to see that it's grabbing all of them, because when you open playlists, like when you see for drums, there's no way you can fit all the tracks onto one screen to see all that kind of stuff. So you just really want to make sure that your groups are on, and then that you have all the tracks you need in there, because it's going to automatically grab all of them. So like in this scenario, this is probably a hard comp, but I'm gonna try to do it anyway right here just cause to show you. So now if I send this up to my main playlist, and now I have that comp, let's take a listen to what this sounds like. Like, so y'all, like this is what I was trying to get y'all to hear, that when you're listening to your comps that you wanna make sure you get rid of or do your best to not have. Like you hear that pop right there, like that's because we don't have a crossfade. Now sometimes you could put a crossfade and the pop's still there. We're about to find out right quick. We're gonna put a crossfade on there right quick, and so when you crossfade, that's likely gonna get rid of the pop. Now, another thing too though is we always wanna make sure we're paying attention to our timing. And now once we have this crossfade here, you know, this is where you can go in and dial in a little bit and actually slide your crossfade back and forth until you find the exact spot that you're wanting. And so that's a really good way once you put the crossfade to really make sure. Like, and you can see he actually had a little bit of a little fudge right there on the front of that note. But like I said, that's why I comped that away. But this is where you can move it. And now you're not even hearing the crossfade, and now you're not even hearing the edit. So that's something we definitely want to make sure. So remember, multi-track groups, make sure we're grabbing both of them, putting them in groups. And this is definitely going to be for sure the case when we're looking at drums, because we have a lot of drum tracks here. Let's get this where we can see all the main drum tracks in this section. So I have my full drums here. Drums, we absolutely want to make sure we have the full kit. I have 2 on kick, 2 on snare, 3 toms, hi-hats, rides, overheads, and rooms for this drum kit. And we're gonna grab the verse. I did kind of and we wanna make sure we have all of them. So you see how I'm just grabbing one section and it's got our whole kit. Now, when I open up my playlists, you know, I'm not gonna be able to see everything across this whole section. So now, this is where having my hotkeys is very handy, using the P and the semicolon, because now I can just go down and look at my individual, you know, the individual tracks that I'm looking to be on. And now whenever you're on these, you want to make sure that they're all in the same order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, because if any of these are out of order on drums and you pull the wrong take from another one, they're likely going to be out of phase and either out of time because it's just a different take than the other one. So always make sure your playlist numbers are in the exact same order under every single track so that they are correlating to that take, the proper take that it should be on. So now I'm going to, let's take a quick listen to, let's go to take 2 here. We'll solo those out. So let's say I end up wanting to use that take. So I do my command V, my option Control V, and it moves it up. I move myself back to the main playlist, and let me turn these solos off so we're not hearing those. And then now I have my comp that I just did from the drums here. Same thing again, we want to make sure we crossfade. Now, another thing to make sure you're paying super close attention with now, seeing transients is something that's pretty easy to see in drums because we can clearly see the kick and snares happening on this track, which are very visible. But what you want to listen to if you are going to be taking comps or cutting up drums to move them around, you have to listen to the cymbals. So that's one thing, like if they have because going into, let's see right here, I'll show you. Let's solo these drums for just a second. Thought he was going to hit more of a cymbal there, but he So there's this crash, like if you did it, like if we did a take and you were like, but I want this to go over that first, that first kick or whatever, and it comes through, but you want to make sure you're not cutting off any of like the full cymbal ring out. Didn't go quite far enough. So let's say we were like up here, and you see that these cymbals, like you want to make sure that it's ringing out all the way. Like you see, like I'm looking at everything from my overheads down here all the way, like see how far these notes are ringing out. Like even though these other ones look a little bit shorter and I might feel like I'm good there, I got to make sure that every note is ringing all the way out and there's no weird hits. Drums are a lot more difficult to work with on this front, so you have to really pay close attention and really just keep listening back and forth, because if I, cut more in the middle, this is probably going to sound a little, which surprisingly his hits sound very similar right there because we're doing the same takes, but you just got to make sure that it's a spot where you're not going to hear any clicks or pops. So we just always want to move those as a group. So the big takeaways from all these, so then that's how we do comping and get those on there. If you wanted all these tracks to end up looking like how I had them before, you can actually, if you decided you wanted to consolidate them, you could hit Shift-Option-3 and it'll consolidate the track all the way across. I'll just do it on this. I'm just going to do a quick duplicate of this just so you can see what it looks like. I'm not going to take any of the other stuff, but I just want you to see, because I don't want to mess that one up. But let's say like if you grab this whole vocal and you're like, now I just want this to look like my edits are all good. I'm done doing editing and I don't want to have any chance of me hitting any of my crossfades, and I know I don't need to move anything. You can do Shift-Option-3 on the number pad, and then it consolidates that whole clip, you can see, into a full clip here with no cuts anymore. So that's how, and that's how you get it looking very clean by the end of your session after you've done all these cuts. Again, I left these in so y'all can see what they looked like, and just, you can see that I'm doing, like, there's times you do have to do time editing and lots of editing in songs sometimes to make them work how you need them to. So that is on that front. So final overview for doing playlists is you want to be taking multiple takes and using playlists whenever with any instrumentation or any vocals or anything you're recording, so you always have those takes. Then you go to your playlist view after that to access any playlists you have. Then from there, let me go down to where we're just sitting on a single thing like a vocal, so it's much easier to see. You have your playlist, and then you do your section selection. You can use the arrow to push it up, or you can use Option Control V, and then you can close your playlist that way. You can also go back to waveform by clicking on it, or we can use Control Command and left or right arrow to move through our different track options. And then from there, always want to crossfade after you've done all your comping, so that we don't have any clicks and pops and everything sounds as seamless and natural as can possibly be. You can use P and the semicolon to move around your session in the edit view very quickly to check out those different views. And then lastly, whenever you're listening to just individual things versus like vocals, again, think about timing, energy, performance, pitch, sibilance, bass, drums, think about the velocity, the timing, the performance, and how that's going, like how each hit compares with what you're replacing it with. Guitars and basses, make sure the notes ringing out. You're finding good sections where you're not having pops and clicks, where you can try to find the best breathe spots where you're hopefully not having to cut in the middle of a transient. So overall, this is how to handle comping and using playlists to get the final best takes and get your session after you're done recording, or during your recording session is when I would recommend doing all this. And then before you head into your mix, so all this is ready. So when you're mixing, you're not worrying about lining up timing and doing editing. Now at that point, you're worried about doing the audio parts. You need to do the fixing and solutions, and then doing the other parts that you're using to make the song sound better, and then your own creativity in mixing. So thanks everybody for watching tonight. I hope this helps you out with your comping in the future, in your future sessions. Y'all have a great rest of the evening, and we will see you next time. Later.
Thanks everybody for watching. If you found this content useful, please like this video. It will tell YouTube to show it to others. If you are enrolled, please go to the Seminars tab on the my.trcoa website and take the quiz over tonight's lesson. And if you need to book one-on-one time with an instructor, text 512-231-0344. If you aren't enrolled, go to trcoa.edu to find out more information about what we do. Also, please post in the chat subjects you'd like to see for our upcoming live streams. And as always, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys on the flip side. Bye, everybody.